All right, here's part two. We left off on number two, and I just want to reiterate, we're just following the instructions of these problems, okay? So the first one had us list any rectangles that had the same area as rectangle 6. This is, remember, rectangle 6, but a different perimeter, okay? Why did it do that? That's annoying. Made my box go all silly. Okay. We'll just deal with it right there. You guys understand what I'm saying? This is rectangle R, okay? Now, so problem 1, B and C have the same area but different perimeter from rectangle R. Do we see that? Yes, okay, good. Now 2, we see that D and F have the same perimeter but different areas as rectangle R, okay? So now number 3 is going to ask us to list any rectangles that have the same area and the same perimeter as rectangle R. So let's go through this. So rectangle A, oops, I did this backwards, guys, sorry, on this one. Area is 6, perimeter is 10, okay? So we have the same area and we have the same perimeter. So A is a rectangle that has the same area and perimeter. And then B we already know doesn't, C we already know doesn't, D we already know doesn't. E though does have the same area and the same perimeter as well. So we'll put E here. And F we see doesn't have the same area and perimeter, okay? Now I want us to take a look at A and E. And I want you to recognize that A and E are the same exact rectangle as R. They have the same lengths, same widths, and same angles in the corners. And they happen to have the same area and the same perimeter. So basically, we can gather that if a shape has the same area and the same perimeter as another, they must be congruent. So that leads us right into problem number 4. Now remember, all this should be getting written down on your paper as well. So it says to use materials from the geometry toolkit to decide which rectangles are congruent. We don't need anything like that. We're just going to list congruent rectangles, okay? So let's start with A, R, and E. Clearly, we just talked about how all 3 of those rectangles are congruent. So the first list of congruent rectangles I'm going to draw or write are R, A, and E. And I know they're congruent not only because they look the same, but because they have the same area and perimeter. Now, are R, A, and E the only rectangles that have the same area and perimeter? No, there are others. So I want you to pause this video and I want you to try to find other sets of congruent rectangles in this problem, okay? So I'm going to pause the video, you're going to pause the video, and we'll come back and do them together. All right, so hopefully you were able to find a couple other sets of congruent rectangles on your own, but if you weren't, let's talk about it now. So I see with my eyes visually that B and C look super similar just by looking at them, right? So let's come over here and let's look at their actual perimeter and area. So if we look, their area is the same and their perimeter is the same. So that means rectangles B and C are congruent. So that is a list of rectangles I will label under number 4, okay? And then lastly, visually, I can see that D and F are very similarly shaped rectangles. So let's go over to their actual area and perimeter, and we can see that they are the same. So another set that we can put, I'm kind of running out of room, so I'm going to squeeze it right here, of congruent rectangles is D and F. So we can see now, not only can we visually look and see that figures are the same, but we can also use area and perimeter to identify if shapes or figures are congruent with each other, okay? So that is our lesson for today, okay? Now I want to go over a summary of everything we've learned, and with the extra time, I'm going to show you what you're going to be doing, okay? So let's get out of this. If you need to pause to finish writing this down, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to move on to the summary, okay? So the summary is really just talking about congruent, okay, what congruent is. So congruent is a new term for an idea we have already been using. We say that two figures are congruent if one can be lined up exactly with the other by a sequence of rigid transformations. So, for example, triangle EFD right here is congruent to triangle ABC because they can be matched up by first reflecting triangle ABC to here and then translating this new reflected triangle over through this arrow to where B becomes F. Now we can tell that they are congruent not only because they went through a sequence of transformation, but also because all of the corresponding side lengths and angles are the same. Okay, they are equal. Some other facts that we can know about congruent figures are we don't need to check all of the measurements to prove two figures are congruent. We just need to find a sequence of rigid transformations that match up the figures. So if we didn't have any of these measurements, but we had this transformation of a reflection then a translation, we could still say with confidence that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF just by the sequence of rigid transformations. Okay. Now also, a figure that looks like a mirror image of another figure can be congruent to it. This means that there must be a reflection in the sequence of transformations that match up the figures. So even if it's a reflection, it still can be congruent if it went through a rigid transformation and all of the side lengths and angles are the same. Okay. And then finally, since two congruent polygons have the same area and the same perimeter, one way to show that two polygons are not congruent is to show that they have a different perimeter area. So let's say two rectangles look super similar, but when we find their area and perimeter, they have a different perimeter. That means even though visually those rectangles look pretty similar, they are not congruent because they do not have the same area and the same perimeter. They have to have both of the same to be congruent. So if one of them is different, then they're not congruent, okay? And we already talked about what congruent was at the beginning of the lesson in the first video. So we're good here. So now you are done with today's lesson, and there should be some time left to practice what you've learned. So you're going to go back, You're going to go back to Google Classroom, all right, 8th grade math, and you're going to go to classwork. And you're going to click on the practice problem set for today, 9-2. And you're going to click on the lesson. The practice, okay? You are going to use your paper that you've been taking all of these notes on to answer as many problems as you can. There's only 6 problems. Yeah, there's only 6 problems on here, okay? So shouldn't be too overwhelming. And you're just going to go through and you're going to explain and answer all of these problems. Now, if you get stuck, I did attach a link. It's going to say something different. It's going to say, if you are stuck on practice problems, click this video for help. It's a YouTube video of a teacher going through the practice problems, okay? Only if you need help. If you're like, oh, I get this from what we did in the videos that I recorded, then you can just do them on your own. But please spend the rest of the class period working quietly on these practice problems on the paper, okay, that you were given. Now this paper, once you are done and the teacher says it's time to clean up, once you are done, you're going to put this paper in your binder like you would any other hole punched paper that I give you, okay, handout. Just like on a normal day, you're going to put it on the back of your binder, in the back of your binder, like a book, because this is lesson 11. It should be after lesson 10. Well, after lesson 9, because lesson 10 I wasn't here yesterday or Tuesday. Okay, so put it in your binder. When the teacher says it's time to start cleaning up, Team leaders, put your collect binders. Make sure everyone has their pencils and erasers in there. Put them in the back. Please, this group, make sure you get the Chromebooks plugged in. You are the last period of the day. All of our students are going to need them again tomorrow, so make sure you plug them in, okay? And tomorrow, our lesson will not be recorded. Oh, sorry, my dog just barked. Will not be recorded. It will be live, okay? So be ready for that. I do have the subs number, so make sure you are on your best behavior because I will be checking in and asking how you did, all right? Otherwise, I will see you all tomorrow in Zoom during 6th period, okay? Have a great day, and I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow. Bye.